I'm here today with Tigrely Campbell with the Lloydminster and Vermilion for Equity Foundation, and we're talking about the heat and the hot weather. And it is particularly difficult for, the marginalized community, people that don't have a home to stay in or a place to go to cool off. So, what are you guys doing right now to help out?
Yeah, so right now we hand out above our outreach days. We hand out bottled water. We're asking for donations of gift cards right now as well. We do have a few other organizations in the community too that we know of where, if we're seeing somebody on the streets where, they're not looking too well or they're, really hot, we can send them to those organizations. So one is here at Residents in Recovery. They're always welcome to come in, grab a snack, cool down, have a bottle of water. The Native Friendship Center has also been letting people in and giving them water as well. I think the men's shelter has revised their hours. They're opening a little bit earlier so that people can access the lobby there too to cool down and grab some water as well. The reason we're requesting the gift cards is even if it's $5, they can go in and get a drink, and they can stay in the establishment for up to 2 hours with a gift card.
Oh, excellent. That's good to know. Tigerly, why is the heat, particular and extreme cold as well? Why is inequity more noticeable at those times?
Oh, we have 30 plus weather happening right now, right? And we have quite a few people staying in tents. So I can't even imagine how sweltering it is right now to be in a tent, regardless if you have, the mesh open for air to come through and for there to be a breeze. Also in the winter time, right? Like the chances of frostbite, of exposure to the extreme elements is just so much higher when you are sleeping outside, when you are in the environment where you're feeling the effects of adverse weather. And then you do see the need for people to come in. You're seeing them in real life, if you'd like, coming in to access services that are typically the basic necessities of life. Like water is the basic necessity of life. So when we're seeing people come in at a higher rate, we are noticing the inequity when it comes to housing, when it comes to accessing services, when it comes to food insecurity and just accessing those basic necessities.
I think a lot of people find it easier maybe to donate food and that kind of thing because they recognize that as a basic human need and a human right. But sometimes with things like heat events, they might not think that's the same in the same category or the same ballpark. What do you say to them?
Yeah, we do see, and it's so apparent like in the winter as well, oh, we need to get out with blankets and socks and mitts and toques, right? But in the summertime, we really see a decline in the donations that are being made because we're thinking, okay, the weather is warmer. They're not going to see these adverse effects from the weather when really they are. Like heat stroke is a real thing, especially for those that are in active addiction where they're using substances that are already raising their body temperatures and then they're outside all day facing this 30 plus degree weather. It's just a recipe for disaster, right? So the need for the basic necessities doesn't just pertain to one season. It's all year round, and I feel like what we perceive as a basic human right um, is probably a topic for a whole other conversation, right? Because then we include housing, then we include food security, then we include transportation, right? So it's not just about food or water. It's a more deeply rooted systemic issue than just like the surface level of what we're seeing.
Well, maybe you wouldn't have time to answer this question then. How do you change hearts and minds to, start paying attention to this?
Right. I think the best answer that I have is to meet people where they're at. We do that in our own outreach. when we're going out and meeting people where they're at in the streets, but also when we are trying to win over hearts and minds. Everybody's on different levels of their understanding, their compassion, their empathy, and just different levels on their journey. So, we're not going to change a person's mind with one conversation. So allowing room to grow. Like this person might have a conversation with five other people before they, start to pick up on a few things here or there. So meet people with the same compassion that we would like to be met with as well.
I think there's a major misconception that people that are in these situations did something, to get in that situation. And that really bothers me because I know that there are so many issues that people have no control over.
Yeah, and there's a plethora of reasons, right? Like, I don't feel like anyone wakes up one day and says, I'm just going to sleep on the streets, right? Or I'm going to use substances and hit rock bottom. There is absolutely a deeper rooted issue there, typically trauma and intergenerational trauma and some sort of like mental illness or life adversity. I personally believe that the addiction piece is a byproduct of the mental health issues or the trauma or the childhood abuse, right? Um, so it's not just surface level. It's so much more complex than somebody's just going to ruin their life using substances or someone's choosing to live on the streets, right? And we see that a lot too, where especially for somebody that's been chronically unhoused for so long, the thought of being housed is scary, right? Like they've had the entire community as their home, and then to say, we're going to place you in this box, essentially, leaves people quite anxious, right? They don't know what to do with that.
Right. Um, I guess those are my only questions for you, Tigerly. Is there anything that you would like to say as a final note?
Yes, so we're always accepting donations of bottled water and gift cards. Also any type of like hygiene products as well. Those are the things that we go through the quickest. And we're always looking for volunteers too, people that want to come out and join the team and just help make our community great. I can leave so there's the page, which is the easiest to get a hold of us. It's just Lloydminster and Vermilion for Equity. We do have a group which is closed. You can join that, but our page is public, so anyone can go in there and message us. We also have an email address, Lloydminster Vermilion for Equity at gmail.com.
Excellent. All right, Tigerly, thank you so much for your time today. And I hope you get a lot of donations coming in and to help those people that are out there in this heat.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me today.
time of the week again when Stephanie Dobson joins us. Stephanie is a lawyer, mediator, and online educator with Hanka Divorce Law and Mediation, offices in Edmonton and Lloydminster. Stephanie, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks again, Stacey.
Today, we are going to be talking about collaborative law and what happens when the process breaks down in that. So, first of all, can you explain to me what is collaborative law?
Sure, and this shouldn't be unfamiliar. This should be familiar, I should say, to our viewers from some of our past episodes, but I'll just do a little refresher. So, the collaborative law is a process that focuses on finding resolution to post-separation issues in a way that works for both parties. So, it's a negotiation process where each party has a specially trained collaborative lawyer who helps them to resolve their separation and divorce issues cooperatively with a focus on the needs and interests of their family. So basically, you're contractually agreeing to work as allies as opposed to adversaries to arrive at resolution. And in the end, we try to achieve resolution without court intervention. And that commitment to staying out of the courtroom is fundamental to the process. So it's a commitment that you make right at the start of the process, and it works in both parties' favor.
And now, what happens when that process breaks down?
Well, we'll say if the process breaks down. How about?
Okay, perfect.
Because it's really important. Excuse me, it's really important to qualify that the collaborative process is appropriate for people before you even go into it. But in that collaborative law contract, there's what's called a disqualification clause. And that means that in the event that you reach impasse or for the process breaks down for whatever reason, the parties have to hire new lawyers to finish off their case. Now, I can appreciate that that might sound like a disadvantage, and that's why I wanted to focus on this today, because it's actually not a disadvantage. It's of prime importance to the integrity of the collaborative process and to protecting the parties' confidentiality. So in the collaborative process, in the meetings that we use to resolve everything, the parties will share information with one another really transparently, and it would be a disservice to the lawyers, to the parties, if the lawyers were able to carry on that in litigation after the process ends in impasse with that information. So that complete transparency and teamwork is incredibly important to the process, and it's for protection of the parties that you have that disqualification clause.
And so now, if things go sideways, Stephanie, do you have to completely start over?
So the question, it's a really good question. And I always say, what does start over really mean? In a way, some parts may have to be started over, but other parts may not have to be. So if, for example, in any legal process, there's documents that will need to be exchanged between the parties. So the general rule is that if there's documents that are disclosable outside of the collaborative process, things like tax returns, bank statements, business financial statements, those are things that are produced in any event, collaborative process or not, they can be used in a next process. But documents that were created within the collaborative process, things like business valuations and appraisals, cannot be used outside of the process without the consent of all the parties and the person who created the document. Now, if some issues were settled, you might not need to fully start over. So for example, there's a myriad of issues to be resolved within the collaborative process. So for instance, you have parenting and you have property division. So say you resolve parenting, but property division was that thing that broke down. Well, you may want to take that the parenting agreement and actually put that into a signed separation agreement just with respect to the parenting side, and then have the thing that needs to be litigated, the thing that got you to impasse being the property division, you may want to put that on to into the litigation sphere. So the last thing that you might be able to use outside of the collaborative process that I had thought of getting ready for today's interview is interests and goals. So things that are important to the parties in their life, in their post-separation life, that drives them to want certain resolution. Those are the kind of things that you can certainly take to your next lawyer, and it helps the lawyer to understand the parties and the case a little bit better. So hopefully that could be used outside of the process.
So, what is the likelihood, Stephanie, that this actually will happen, that you'll get to a point where there's an impasse and then you do have to hire some new lawyers?
Well, and that's why we started this with an if, not when, because it does sound like a big deal, but the chance of getting to impasse is very low. So I've done about over around 100 or so cases in the 17 years that I've been practicing, and there's less than a handful of cases which have resulted in impasse. I couldn't think off the top of my head, but somewhere around less than a handful of cases. But the most important thing that you can do is to have that proper analysis done of your case before starting the collaborative process to make sure that you're an appropriate candidate for the process. So I always say, if you're using a process outside of the courtroom, it's called appropriate dispute resolution. Not the ADR is an alternative dispute resolution, it's appropriate dispute resolution. So let's focus on choosing that appropriate process for your particular case.
All right, Stephanie. Well, thank you so much for joining me this week, and we will chat with you again next week.
Thanks, Stacy.